Next we have holly and hauntings, snow and spooks. Gather the whole family, stoke up the fire, and make sure your hot chocolate doesn't get cold. It's time for the 4th episode of our festive serial, The Darkling Yule. The Darkling Yule, by Vincent Hart. Episode 4.
The holly and the ivy, when they are both full grown, of all the trees that are in the wood, the holly bears the crown. The rising of the sun and the running of the deer, the playing of the merry organ, sweet singing in the choir. The holly bears a blossom as white as the lily flower, and worthy bore sweet Jesus Christ to be our sweet Saviour. The rising of the sun and the running of the deer.
I say, is this... Can it be? Well, I never. It's the church. But what's happened to it? It looks magical. We call it the sanctuary. Holy ground, old bean. Safe as houses, young man. The Holy King and all his hunters can't get in. Only the very best people are allowed here. What? Beowulf gawped in delight at the transformed church. There were bright lanterns of stained glass all around the churchyard. There were braziers full of hot coals that had the power to repel the wild weather. The church doors were wide open and golden light blazed from within. Everywhere there were vivid colours and jolly sounds. Bagpipers and drummers were playing so that a group of ladies in fanciful gowns could dance in and out of the church. Stranger than the musicians and the dancers were the animals. Beowulf could see through the church's doors that all the pews had been pushed aside, and there were cows being milked where a congregation normally kneeled. A silvery stream of melted snow had wound through the graves, and Beowulf saw that swans were swimming regally round and round the churchyard, as though they were keeping watch. It's beautiful, though I'm not sure Father Fitzpatrick will approve of livestock in the church. Oh, I'm sure that animals can be quite welcome this time of year. Stables and stalls and all that, don't you know? It's more like a circus than a church. Quite right too, young shaver. Circuses are full of magic, miracles and mirth. I rather think that churches should be the same. But what are you all doing here? Are you magicians? Are you spirits or kings or... Those sound like philosophical questions. We lords of leaping are more men of action than men of thought. Oh, rather. All the energy in the legs, not much left for the brains. You like leaping and laughing, what? I'm very glad that you've helped me, but do you think you could do anything to stop the Holy King? If you have the magic to keep this place safe, perhaps you could help me fight back against that brute. I don't know, my boy. We're rather more lovers than fighters. Just ask the ladies dancing. I say we forget about that dreadful old blister of a king. The sanctuary is a perfect place to celebrate. I should say so. Now we've given that hairy plum pudding the slip, we should stay here and enjoy the dancing. Beowulf looked around himself at the warmth, light and merriment. The sanctuary represented all that Beowulf loved about Christmas. This might be a place to stay and forget about the darkness beyond the churchyard. I would love to stay here. I honestly would. But I think it's my duty to stop the Holy King. For some reason I'm involved in his... what? His spell? His story? I think I have to find a way to defeat him. Do you have any... well, I don't know... spells or swords or magic, I suppose? You're a stout-hearted lad, aren't you? I admire your courage. We lords have given you the little help we can offer, but it's the ladies you need for magic. We chaps are pretty much mentally negligible, but the ladies are bright as buttons, don't you know? I say, ladies, when you finish your jig, could I have a moment of your time?
More than a moment, Lord Hart. This is the sanctuary. We have all the time in the world.
Very decent of you, my lady. May I introduce young Beowulf, hero and magician? He's just had a run-in with the Holy King and given the rotter a stern telling off. Beowulf, this is Lady Mary. She is very much in charge around here. You could call her the Queen, I suppose.
Now, my lord. I'm not a queen, just a lady.
I'm not a hero or a magician. I'm just a boy.
That remains to be seen, Beowulf. When we deal with magic, nothing is simple. This is just a church, but magic makes it a sanctuary. Your carols are just songs, but magic makes them spells. The Holly King is just an old ghost, but magic has made him something terrible.
Do you know how I can stop him?
I do not. Here at the sanctuary, we have the magic of warmth and light, but we do not have enough to warm the heart of the Holly King. We can keep the hunt out, but we can't fight them. The magic here is only for defense, kindness, and protection. I think you will need to seek out greater powers than mine. You need to travel through the darkness until you find the everlasting light. That is your only hope against the Holly King's terrible darkness.
But if I leave here, won't he catch me?
Your words shook him, Beowulf. He has been turned away for a while. I think you would have the time to reach town and seek the everlasting light. There is a great magician in Little Bedlam, a magician who will be able to guide you.
Then I suppose I must go. I hate the thought of going out there. It's so warm here, and you have all these happy friends and beautiful animals.
You are welcome to stay, Beowulf. You could leave others to fight the Holly King.
I really don't think I can. He defeated the wise men and the lords, but I managed to get away from him. The lady in the attic helped me, of course, and I need to help her in return. If I can do something, I must.
That's very brave of you, Beowulf. Very brave indeed. If you're brave enough to face the dark, I think we ought to give you a gift. Come with me into the church.
Lady Mary led Beowulf through the throng of animals and revellers. The lords were dancing with the ladies while the drummers and pipers were playing merrily. When Beowulf stepped into the church, it felt like he was walking into a barn. There were cows being milked by jolly dairy maids, and there were contented geese sitting on nests full of eggs. Despite the strangeness of the scene, there was a happy, homely atmosphere. Lady Mary took Beowulf all the way to the church's altar. A small box of dark wood sat on the altar.
That box contains the greatest treasures of the sanctuary. Open the box, Beowulf, and you will see our magic.
Nervously, Beowulf approached the altar. The box looked small and unimpressive, but Beowulf knew that it must contain extraordinary powers. With shaking fingers he reached out and slowly lifted the lid of the box. Golden light shone out, and all the sounds of festivity were hushed. Golden rings? The 5 gold rings?
That's right, Beowulf. Those 5 rings are the heart of the sanctuary. They keep us safe. I offer one of them to you.
Oh, thank you. But if I take it, will you still be safe?
When the rings are parted from each other, they will gradually weaken. In time, the sanctuary will no longer be safe. In time, the ring you take will have no strength. You must defeat the Holly King before the rings weaken, Beowulf. Use your magic wisely.
I'm sorry to sound stupid, but what will the ring do?
Magic is not always predictable. The rings are filled with warmth, light, and love. I believe that the ring will keep you safe from the Holly King for a time. It should keep you warm and light your way. If necessary, it will give healing to those who need it. Take your gift, Beowulf, and then find the everlasting light.
Beowulf reached out, wondering which ring he should take. One of the rings glowed brighter than the others, and it seemed to call out to him as his hand moved towards it. This is the one. Beowulf picked up the ring and slid it onto his finger. He immediately felt a warmth flood through him that was reminiscent of a Christmas day spent with his family. Despite his fears, he felt that he was wrapped in love and safety.
The power is yours now, Beowulf. The fate of the world rests with you. I am not afraid, young hero. You have the heart to defeat the Holly King.
So, must I go to town alone?
You are not alone. You have your book and you have the ring. Strong magic travels with you, Beowulf. Find the magician and you will find the secret to defeating the Holly King.
Where should I look for the magician?
The ring will light your way. If the blizzard is too fierce or the night too dark, you must sing.
I'm very scared, my lady.
You are courageous, young hero. True courage is being scared, but still doing what is right.
I suppose you're right. If I'm the only one that can stop the Holly King, I'll do whatever I can.
You're a brave boy. I shall lead you to the gate.
Feeling frightened and reluctant to leave, Beowulf followed Lady Mary through the circus atmosphere of the sanctuary. Godspeed, young hero!
Farewell, brave magician.
Pip pip, old chum! Thank you. Thank you all.
This is the gate, Beowulf. When you step out of the sanctuary, all will be dark and cold. If you look back, you will see only a dark and empty church. Do not be afraid. We will be safe while the rings last.
I think I understand. I'll run as fast as I can to town. It's not really very far. It's just not a very nice journey for night time, especially a night like this.
Carry our love and our hopes with you, Beowulf. You will find the magician.
The iron gates of the churchyard swung open, and Beowulf felt a gust of freezing wind. With fierce determination he stepped out of the sanctuary and into the night. Immediately the music ceased, and the lights vanished. Oh my! They're gone! Vanished like a dream! As Lady Mary had said, when Beowulf looked back, all he could see was a dark and empty churchyard. The snow and frost covered everything. Fortunately, the moon was shining again, peeking through a gap in the clouds. Feeling lonely and frightened, Beowulf began to jog through the snow, heading as quickly as he could towards Little Bedlam. He had never liked the road at night. He always imagined being pursued by something stealthy and strange. This night was worse than any other, because Beowulf knew for certain that dark powers were abroad. Father always said there were no ghosts or monsters. I wish to goodness he'd been right. As Beowulf ran, the clouds rolled across the moon and the night became horribly dark. Beowulf could see only deep black and stark white. There were no lights to be seen, and no sounds but his footfalls and his breathing. Beowulf had never felt such loneliness, misery, and fear. He wondered if this was just his imagination, or whether this was the dark heart of the Holly King. Beowulf yearned for warmth and companionship. I wish I hadn't left the sanctuary. I wish that none of this had happened. No point wishing. I wished for magic, and look where that got me. Snow started falling fiercely again, and Beowulf found himself struggling to see it all. He began to imagine how it might feel to live in a world where the sun vanished forever. He had read many tales of the Vikings, and he knew that they spoke of a mighty wolf called Fenrir. That terrible beast was a force of the night, a monster so terrible that it would, one day, swallow the sun and devour Odin, king of the gods. Beowulf remembered an illustration he had seen of the dark wolf. It had been a hideous thing, huge and predatory, but also slinking and sly. Although he tried to think of happy things, Beowulf's imagination was picturing slinking shapes in the deep darkness all around him. There might be cunning creatures running on light feet, waiting for their prey to show weakness. Mustn't think like that. Keep running. As Beowulf pushed the dark creatures from his mind, he heard a sound that chilled him. The howl was both fierce and despairing. It came from far behind Beowulf, but not so far that he thought he could outrun it. Nevertheless, Beowulf quickened his pace. There was no doubt that there were wolves in the icy dark. Beowulf knew that the wolves were allies of the Holly King. The king himself might have gone to hunt the unicorn, but he had sent his servants to pursue Beowulf. Perhaps they would only catch him and hold him. Perhaps they would try to stop him more permanently. No! No! Beowulf ran, his lungs burning from the cold air. He could see the buildings of the town ahead, but they gave no comfort. There were no lights and no signs of life. The alleys and narrow streets might be filled with swift, sneaking shapes. The ring! Beowulf knew he needed the magic of the sanctuary. Despite his terrible fears, Beowulf slowed his pace. He could hear the wolves that were running through the snow all around him. He pulled his book from his satchel and opened it. The ring on his hand began to glow, as did the words on the page. The magic of the sanctuary was merging with the magic of the carols. In the golden light of the book and the ring, he saw many eyes in the dark. The creatures stayed back from the ring of light that spread around Beowulf. The snow around him shone with gold and silver, and the things in the shadows would not touch the blessed ground. Beowulf could see, dimly, the shapes that surrounded him. They were perhaps wolves, though some of them, those furthest from the light, seemed to walk on 2 legs. They certainly had cruel eyes, shining teeth, and sleek, starveling bodies. They were hungry for Beowulf's warmth, but also afraid of it. They longed to experience joy, yet they could not understand their own longing, and that made them afraid. In their fear they grew angry, and in their anger they were terrible. The wolves wanted Beowulf's light and fire to dim. When he was weak, they would no longer fear him. Then they would all taste a tiny fraction of his heart's warmth. Beowulf listened to the soft, yearning breath of the creatures, and he heard voices from the darkness.
Throw away the fire, child. Close the book. You can't resist forever. Give in now. Make it quick.
Beowulf felt the temptation to give in. The triumph of the dark was, after all, inevitable. The night would always follow the day. Winter would always follow summer. At the end of every life, no matter how joyful, death was waiting. It was better to give in and face the dark.
Make it fast. It won't hurt, little boy. Good boy. Put out the light. No more fire. No more running. Do not fight.
Beowulf's hands were shaking from the cold and from terror. The light around him was flickering. Lady Mary had said that the ring could not last forever. Beowulf wondered whether it might be better to get it over with. He imagined the sanctuary surrounded by wolves. Their protection would fail, and the revellers there would be helpless. Beowulf had seen what foxes could do to hens. He knew that wolves would be so much worse. The sanctuary's light and jollity would be devoured.
No, I won't give in.
Foolish boy. Silly little boy. Now we will make it hurt.
Beowulf held his hand high, letting the light of the ring shine onto his foes. He glared at them defiantly. He would walk on while the ring's light lasted. Summoning all his determination, Beowulf began to trudge on through the snow. The wolves howled and whined and began to back away.
We will follow you, chase you, catch you.
Despite their threats, the wolves kept their distance, following Beowulf and snarling at him from the dark. They ran frantically back and forth, but they did not dare to enter the circle of light. To take his mind from the hideous, unnatural shapes of the wolves, Beowulf began to sing.
O little town of Bethlehem, how still we see thee lie. Above thy deep and dreamless sleep, the silent stars go by. Yet in thy dark street shineth the everlasting light. The hopes and fears of all the years are met in thee tonight.
As Beowulf walked and sang, he found himself feeling braver. The familiar buildings of the town were dark, but there were still Christmas decorations in the windows. A beam of light shone from the golden ring, guiding Beowulf through the narrow, winding streets of Little Bedlam. The wolves shrank back further as a new light shone from up ahead. As Beowulf's carol came to an end, he realized that he was standing outside the town's bookshop. He was certain that the shop had always been called Hope's, but now the sign read, The Everlasting Light. There was a Christmas tree in the window of the shop, and its fairy lights were twinkling.
Books! This must be the home of the magician!
Beowulf turned to look behind him. The wolves had vanished, melting back into the night. Still trembling, Beowulf pushed at the door, and, to his relief, it swung open. Hello? Is anyone there?
Well, naturally I'm here. I've been expecting you. Normally I would have been in bed hours ago. Still, if we need to avert eternal winter, I suppose I can miss my bedtime. Fenrir's brood have slunk off, have they? Jolly good.
An elderly lady walked out from amongst a labyrinth of shelves. She wore pyjamas, fluffy slippers, and a thick dressing gown. Have they gone? I think they're gone for now, at least. Thank goodness. This might sound rather silly, but I'm looking for a magician. Can you help me?
Nothing silly about it. You found a magician. I'm Eve Hope and I guard the everlasting light. Well, I do tonight. Mostly I just run a bookshop, though that's equally important, wouldn't you agree?
Oh yes, of course.
You look surprised. You were expecting your magician to be a man, no doubt. Perhaps you were thinking of a long beard and a robe sewn with magical runes, eh?
Oh, it's not that. I didn't expect a magician to wear a dressing gown.
I don't see why not. A dressing gown is a very fine garment to wear when saving the world. Enough of this chit-chat. We must arm you for the coming battle. You won't defeat the Holly King without the right weapons, will you?
You have weapons?
You're surrounded by them. Books, young man, are some of the finest weapons imaginable. For magicians like ourselves, knowledge really is power.
I still don't know if I'm a magician. I'm just trying to do the right thing.
Book of spells, magic ring, found the everlasting light. Yes, yes, and yes. That makes you a magician. No need to quibble. Time is of the essence. We must arm you with knowledge and then set you on your way. You'll want to defeat the Holly King, lay the ghost to rest and save the world before sunrise. That ring won't last forever, and I don't think you've got more than 3 or 4 carols left in you. Magic is exhausting, don't you find? Don't answer that. Rhetorical question. So, knowledge. We must start with stories.
As she spoke, Eve began to pull books from the shelves around her and lay them on the counter. Stories?
Oh yes. All stories are magic, and all magic comes from stories. This Darkling Yule is all a story. Truth be told, it's a mixture of stories. A deadly mixture. Stories blended together. Stories of men, monsters and myths. All mixed up into a poisonous brew.
What caused it? Why has the Darkling Yule happened?
Your fault, young magician. Unwise wishing and dreaming. You really must be more careful in future. We magicians have to be very wary, you know. Magic makes monsters. Still, monsters make heroes, so it's not all doom and gloom.
My fault? How horrible. I didn't mean to do all this.
Not to worry, not to worry. The only thing you can do is try to put right what went wrong. All young magicians make mistakes. You eat the wrong apple or dream the wrong dream, and the next thing you know, bang, you're in the middle of some ghastly adventure. All very tiring. Still, you're going to put things right, aren't you?
I will. I'll do whatever I have to.
That's the spirit. Don't look so glum. Some heroes really enjoy their work, you know. Your namesake, Beowulf, he had a lot of fun fighting monsters.
I know about him. He was a Danish hero. There was a monster attacking a king's hall, and Beowulf fought it.
That's right. All here in this book.
Beowulf looked at the book on the counter. The words made no sense to him, but there were wonderful illustrations of a mighty hero wrestling with a hideous monster. The beast was huge and green. It reminded Beowulf of the Holly King. He was a proper hero, though. Look at him. I can't fight a monster.
You'll need a different approach, perhaps, but you needn't fret. You don't need those bulging muscles. Strength for a magician comes from the heart. When you need strength, you'll find it. You stood up to the Holly King in the woods, didn't you? That's strength. Anyway, the story of Beowulf is just one thread of this tapestry. Next, you need to know the old myths of the Holly King, the Oak King, and the Unicorn.
I've seen them all. But the Oak King is dead, and the unicorn ran away.
Quite so. The Oak King and the Holly King are really just representations of the seasons. In summer, the Oak King triumphs, and in winter, it's the Holly King. The Holly King slays the unicorn, and then the Oak King brings it back to life. It's all just a metaphor for the seasons. Bit of religious imagery thrown in, resurrection and all that. The characters should just be metaphors. You've managed to bring them to life.
Then how do I turn them back into stories?
There's one more thread to the tapestry. The Holly King that you've met is driven by a human spirit. All that loss and yearning, that's not from a mythical winter king. That's from a ghost.
A ghost?
A ghost from your home, Lovell Manor. You must have heard the song, The Mistletoe Bough.
I'm not sure. I think I have a faint recollection of someone singing it. Perhaps it was Mr. McCormack. A sad song about a lost bride.
It's right here in this book of folk songs. This explains your ghost. The mistletoe hung in the castle hall. The holly branch shone on the old oak wall. And the baron's retainers were blithe and gay, and keeping their Christmas holiday. The baron beheld with a father's pride his beautiful child, young Lovell's bride, while she with her bright eyes seemed to be the star of the goodly company. Oh, the mistletoe bough! Oh, the mistletoe bough! I'm weary of dancing now, she cried. Here, tarry a moment, I'll hide. And Lovell, be sure thou'lt first to trace the clue to my secret lurking place. Away she ran, and her friends began each tower to search, and each nook to scan. And young Lovell cried, Oh, where dost thou hide? I'm lonesome without thee, my own dear bride. Oh, the mistletoe bough! Oh, the mistletoe bough! They sought her that night, and they sought her next day, and they sought her in vain while a week passed away. In the highest, the lowest, the loneliest spot, young Lovell sought wildly, but found her not. And years flew by, and their grief at last was told as a sorrowful tale long past. And when Lovell appeared, the children cried, See, the old man weeps for his fairy bride. Oh, the mistletoe bough! Oh, the mistletoe bough! At length an oak chest that had long lain hid was found in the castle. They raised the lid, and the skeleton form lay mouldering there, in the bridal wreath of that lady fair. Oh, sad was her fate! In sportive jest she hid from her lord in the old oak chest. It closed with a spring and dreadful doom. The bride lay clasped in her living tomb. Oh, the mistletoe bough! Oh, the mistletoe bough! The ghost of Lord Greendale Lovell has become the Holly King. Imagine all that cold and misery in one place. Lord Lovell's spirit is endlessly grieving and yearning. The Holly King's endlessly cold. It makes sense that the two stories would merge into one monster. Greendale becomes Grendel. We could digress, of course, and discuss Norse myths or the Wild Hunt, but I don't want this to take all night. This is where you step in. You're the hero that slays the monster.
How on earth can I fight him? He's a ghost and a king and a monster all in one.
You need to end the story, one way or another. You must go to a place you fear and find a weapon. That's what heroes do.
Wait a moment. I'm afraid of the attic at home, and that's where I saw the ghost. She's the bride of Lord Lovell. She helped me when I was in the woods. She must have the weapon I need.
Now you're thinking like a magician. Well done. I can see there's hope of avoiding eternal winter.
I must get home. I must go to the attic.
And you must do so before your magic fades and the sun rises, young hero, or the sun will vanish from the sky forever and the Holly King will reign.
The Darkling Yule was written by Vincent Hart. The part of Ivy was played by Sam Anderson. Beowulf's Carol was sung by Sydel Heaviside. The part of Eve Hope was played by Jenny Morrill. Additional editing by Adam Lloyd. All of the vocal work and direction by Patrick Heaviside. The Darkling Yule is a This, That and the Other production. Find us online at ttat.co.uk.